Welcome back to another edition of the Journey Mindfulness Podcast. And today I am welcoming back our first guest, Dr. Wendy Hill, a renowned hypnotherapist and inner child therapist. And she is a wonderful mentor, I would say master therapist and friend. So welcome back, Dr. Hill.
Hey, Jim. I know you want to talk about win-win communication, right?
Yes, I do want to talk about win-win communication because it's one of the most important things I think I've ever learned in my entire life.
Really?
I think so.
I would have to agree. It's so powerful. So I was thinking, how much has changed my life, and I know it's changed your life too.
Yeah, I mean, it's so much happens, right? When we communicate with people, how we relate to people, and, in relationship, it's so important to get it right. And even just the communication with ourselves. But you taught me, and this is so what happened to me was that I had to have a conversation that I thought was impossible. And you were like, hang on, you can do this. And I'm like, this is impossible. There's no way. And you're like, you can give it a shot, see what happens. And it worked. And I'm like, okay, there's something to this. So we got to share this because this is just so important.
Well, there are three things I was just thinking that are right out the bat that a person has to know about learning win-win communication. One is that you have to care about other people and what they're experiencing. If you don't want to place yourself there, then any communication you have is going to be a manipulation from your ego somehow.
Hmm.
So number one, you have to care about where other people are feeling and experiencing. Number two, it's difficult. Learning how to do win-win communication is very difficult because we're not taught it. Most of us are not raised in homes. We're raised maybe around sarcasm or communication that really doesn't really help or really work that well. So the third thing is that once you make that decision that you're going to care about other people and you are okay with it being difficult to learn, and I'm going to teach you today, your audience today, is that the results, whatever happens as a result, you will win something.
Yeah.
Whether you win the point or not, oftentimes you will, but sometimes you won't. But even if you don't, there's something very powerful in the experience of win-win communication where you end up leaving it feeling somehow fulfilled.
Yeah. Like you gave it a, a good, honest faith effort or in a loving way, and you can feel good about it.
So I like to tell, if you want, I can tell the story on how I began to learn win-win communication because it
I
wasn't.
would love to hear
Okay, so I I'm a very direct person, as your audience can probably tell.
it.
I'm direct. This isn't always taken that well. So sometimes I would get feedback of, "Oh, Wendy, you put people off sometimes because it's how you communicate." Okay, well, I just, for most of my life, I said, that's their problem. So
Hmm.
one day, this was years before I became a therapist. And as you know, I've been a therapist for 50 years now. It's a long time. So it was way back before I was a therapist, and I was just maybe going to be getting my license. And I happened to be a teacher at the time. And I taught at a school where there was an administrator that I thought was after me. And I just hated her. And didn't like her at all. I thought she didn't like me. Not a lot of it was projection. So I was in my yard one day, and this I also invented the pillow head at the same time.
Yeah.
in my yard one day and I was thinking about her and I was doing weeds and I happened to have a hammer and there was a big rock and I decided that she was the rock and I began hitting the rock and it just crumbled to pieces. And when I was done with that, I sat quietly and I felt this enormous relief. And I felt this affinity to this woman that I had just demolished. That afternoon, I went out to lunch, and there she was sitting in the restaurant by herself. Talk about how the universe really aids you in learning and teaching.
Yeah, very
And
synchronicity.
because I had done that little pillow hit or that rock hit, there wasn't the anger and fear inside of me. I walked up to her, and her name was Diane, and I said, "Hi, I haven't seen you in a while." We sat and had a conversation. It was very friendly, and I left feeling wonderful. So I decided I'm going to have to learn how to communicate in a way that feels a lot better than the way I have been. So I made the decision to teach myself win-win communication. And the way I've decided to do it is every day I go on a couple-mile walk. So that's sort of my walking meditation. And I decided that on that walk, I would have a conversation with whoever or whatever was in my life that was a challenge. And there was always someone or something.
Sure.
So the rule that I made is that whatever I said to them, their response had to show that somehow I was connecting with them, that somehow they were enrolled in the conversation, even if it was a conflicting one. And if it didn't, I didn't get that response. I had to go back and redesign, re-say in another way whatever it is I needed to say. Well, at first it didn't work very well because my ego was involved in wanting to be right. And it was also involved with wanting to manipulate a point and get what I wanted out of it.
Mm.
So over and over again, I would fail because the person's response in my head would always be a negative one. Or if they somehow I won, they would not feel good about it. So the rule is that they had to feel good about whatever we talked about.
Okay.
So it took a while for me to realize that I had to genuinely care about who I was talking to. I had to in my heart. That was it was an amazing insight for me.
That's an amazing insight for a lot of people to be able to put themselves in that mindset.
So I began to find words are very important as you know, and the tone of the word, the tone of our voice. A word can simply one single tone or one single word said in the wrong way can turn things backwards and really not work well. So I would start to devise a statement like maybe what I want or what I want to experience with them or what I want to achieve. And if it didn't work, I had to, again, devise it again. But this time I began to think about if I were that person hearing this, what does it feel like? And what would I want to hear? So I began to say things like, you and I are friends, and our friendship is really important. So whatever happens here, I want you to know that I care about what happens between us in this conversation. Or I might say, we work together and clearly something hasn't been going right here, but I want you to know that I want to continue working with you. Or if not, I want us both to feel really good about whatever we decide. So it always had to start with something positive. And once that was said, then I had to find a way to describe the problem without them feeling shame. Because everybody feels some degree of shame. It's very easy to shame for another person. We humans are very sensitive.
Yeah.
So I might say something like, well, let's say I'm talking with a friend and they're pretty been very critical of me. And I want the friendship to continue, but I don't want that behavior to continue. So instead of saying, as I was might have raised, say, you're really critical, I don't like it. You're probably a narcissist. Yeah,
Eh,
hearing a little bit. But that's how a lot of people talk and try and solve problems.
yeah, very common.
So instead I had to define what does it feel like inside that person when they were being critical or when they were having that experience, whatever it is that I wasn't comfortable with. And lo and behold, I started realizing that people are really scared and they're under stress. And whatever they said or did, most likely, bottom line, didn't have to do with me. And that's another mind blowing thing because I'm one of those people that always taking things personally.
Oh, we take everything so personal, don't we?
So I had to realize that whatever they said or whatever they did or their behavior didn't have to do with me. So I might say, I realized there's a possibility you might have been under a lot of stress. That might, how does that feel to hear that? Well, it feels a lot better than saying, stop criticizing me. It's not, well, what's wrong with you? So you see how I began to think about words. And sometimes I would have to refine my statement a bunch of times and finally get to the point of this is what I would like. And in the example I'm giving you as a friend, I would say, I would really like for us to have this kind and loving exchange with each other. I want you to know how sensitive I am sometimes that I get my feelings hurt. Maybe I would say it, maybe I wouldn't. So I'm trying to make it up in my mind right now as we're talking.
Yeah.
So everything is an experiment and everything is that we're designing and defining in this one-way communication. But the point I'm making so far is always start with something positive that you know. Put yourself in that other person's body and mind and emotions. Say State the problem in a way that makes them know you care about what they're experiencing. That's a tricky thing to do, but it can be done.
Yes.
And then take it to this is what I want. And you have to say, this is what I want. And you might also say, what is it that you want? Now, soon after that, I kept doing this. I would always walk with my dog on leash. And by the way, we can talk more about the details of how to advise this because I want you to ask me a question because you probably know more about this too.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm walking my dog one day, and there's a neighbor that has adopted a herding dog. My dog happened to be a Rottweiler, and Rottweiler he was very sweet and loving, and used to come and would to work me at work, and my clients loved him. But when another dog is hurting him, gradually his little hackles go up, and I'll tell you, Rottweilers mean business.
Eh,
Well, this dog, day by day, we get closer and closer and closer. And one day, I knew there was going to be a fight. It was very, very scary. I was all alone, and I knew there was going to be blood.
Oh gosh.
And again, the universe came and saved me. A car came up in that instant because it was a matter of seconds. Stopped, picked up the herding dog, and drove off. And I, to this day, don't know who that was. I learned where the herding dog lived. So later that day, I went over, rang the doorbell, and told the story. This is what happened. And the woman said, I have no idea who that was. But I'll tell my husband what happened, and he'll call you tonight. So I gave my number, and I got a clue that night. And the first thing out of his mouth was, I'll never forget, "Who do you think you are telling me what to do with my dog?" Mm.
Close win-win communication.
M- Opportunity, opportunity. I went with communication with this crazy person. My heart started racing. My first thought was, well, I can always call animal control and have this dog removed, report him because he spoke. It's against the law to have him out, not on a leash. I didn't do that. So I said, waited for my heart to slow down a little bit. By the way, in doing win-win communication, it's always good to take it slow. Because if there's a tension or there's a situation has some anxiety, it's good to slow yourself down.
There is research that I did not know this, that when there's like a rhythm and like a slow, almost like hypnotic, but that helps the other person calm down and be more receptive. It's just interesting.
My experience.
Yeah.
Said, you and I are neighbors, and we have a problem here. I want to solve it the most positive way possible. What do you want? His answer, who the heck do you think you are? This is my dog. I'll tell my dog what I want to do. You have no rights here. So I said, same thing, slowly. You and I are neighbors. You have a problem that needs to be resolved. I want to resolve it in the most positive way possible. And always, what do you want? Well, he responded explosively again. So I said, you never answered my question. What question? You and I are neighbors, so we have a problem. I want to solve it in the most positive way possible. What do you want? Silence ensued. I got it. He saw somehow beyond his narcissism into rational thinking and my calmness and my willingness to not yell back at him. I was not going to be verbally abusive to him.
Yeah,
A
you disarmed him.
caring act. So he said, well, I'll take care of it. The call ended. And I didn't see that dog again. And I learned the following week that the individual had taken him to a ranch where this dog could run around and be happy, which made me very happy because a herding dog could be happy on a ranch. This is strictly one-way communication. And I had to slow myself way down, slow my heartbeat, and think, what have I taught myself? What am I learning that can really get a positive result?
Yeah.
And that was an example. I've used that formula of caring about the other person in some way, making sure they care. Know that. Wording my words with no sarcasm and no tone, telling them what I need and want, and ask them what they want. Sometimes the conversations will go on longer and require much more negotiating. But basically, never have a tone, always speak words that are kind. Don't use words that can be interpreted as being insulting. Because sometimes we can, for smart people, we can insult people nicely
Yes.
and they know it,
Absolutely.
and use shame joking, what I call shame joking, and make, I was just kidding. But they got it. So what I missed is something else you want to add? Talk to me.
Yeah, no, so I remember you walking me through this, and it was very important to sort of frame the buy-in, right? Like how are you going to start this out? And you need to be very precise and in clarifying what it is that you want. So I remember going through that. I also remember this taking like 4 hours to go through a conversation that I was planning on having. And you know,
Your conversation?
of yeah, us working together to try to come up, like
Oh,
me practicing, yeah, you teaching me and then me practicing what I was going to say, how I was going to say it. And you would physically have me get up and switch chairs. So I had 2 chairs, and I would get up and if all right, now how would you feel if that was said to you and put yourself in that person's position, and then s use your intuition as best you can to think about how they would react to that. And if it's not positive or favorable, you gotta go back and reframe it until you get a favorable outcome.
which not necessarily will be the outcome that the ego wants.
May not.
Sometimes it's negotiating. Sometimes it's realizing that you're wrong. Sometimes it's getting very clearly a result that's for the highest good as well. And if it's what you're asking that of that other person, it really is of the highest good, and you know that in your heart, then you persevere as best you can until that person realizes it as well. But you have to be careful between that and what the ego wants.
Yes, I would say you have to be very mindful and not attached to the outcome of what I think or you think it would be. But what you said is also if you're able to come together and come to a solution that is for the highest good, then you can be at peace with that, which I think is very important.
Sometimes we have to let go of things that we think we want or need. Not easy.
No.
And sometimes we have to persevere a determination with things that we know are right and not give up, not compromise.
This is the conversation that I first applied this formula to was not a conversation that I wanted to have because I didn't think it would matter. I thought it would be impossible. That it would be impossible for me to have this conversation and come to a solution that would be the best for the people that were involved. And you told me, give it a shot.
I remember it was with a person that you thought didn't care about you at all, what
Mhm.
you needed. And going into this kind of conversation is very scary.
Oh, yes.
But if you remember something that I learned as a therapist, one of the great gifts of being a therapist is that everybody's scared and everybody wants love. Those two things, everybody's scared and everybody wants love. And if we can realize that, you were starting to realize that that person you were talking to,
Mhm.
as you began to have the courage to face it and to be kind, that person began to respond, as I recall.
Yes.
All of a sudden, a relationship that you never thought you could have with this person began to.
Shockingly.
Shockingly.
What it was one of those eureka moments where I could not see a positive result. And I had to trust you that this could work, right? I had somewhere in my mind, I had to believe that I could actually do this. It was not easy to arrive at, which is why I think this is so important to share with people. Like there's always a possibility that you can face your fear in this type of way and resolve things. There's so many things that could be resolved that we never even give it a shot. We never even give it a chance.
I think the statement of somehow saying, I care about you, I care about what you think, I care about what you experience. Those words said out loud are so powerful. And if they're said to a person who we think doesn't care about us or who is so lost in whatever delusional thinking they may have, chances are pretty good you're going to reach them. There is a percentage of people that we can't reach, we can't change, and we just let it go or do
Yeah.
the boundaries and do what we have to do, even though they may not like it. But most of the time, you will be amazed and surprised how you can turn people around.
But you're right. Taught, we're really not taught how to communicate like this anywhere. To be able to have a heart to heart or to care about the other person, even though we may have had some issue. But when you can get yourself into that position where it's heart centered and you can say those things in a very authentic way, when you make that connection and it's sincere, I mean, you're setting the stage for success right at the beginning, of the conversation, the way that you have framed it.
The other thing that occurs to me is that communication today isn't what my generation and your generation, how we communicate. Now it's texting or email.
Mhm.
We have this happen, this one-way communication in texting. That's how most people communicate these days. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm curious your thoughts on this because when we did it, it was like you have to have this face to face. When it's that important, it has to be face to face.
And you have to then, if someone just wants to text and get it out of the way, you have to be able to say, this is important. I want to do it face to face with you or on the phone at the very least. So in a text, what do you think would be a good way to start a text conversation on this? Even small things can be one-way communication on a texting level too.
Okay, so in a text, like how would I start a win-win communication?
Yeah, let's play with that for a minute.
I would really want their attention. So if that's the only way to get it, can we perhaps, like, I know we need to text to communicate, but would you mind giving me, I don't know, 30 minutes of your time or 10 minutes of your time to really focus on this issue? Can we talk about that?
So that, as you just said that, imagine that you're in that other person's body reading that. How does that come across?
It's pretty neutral to me. Like, I really want to spend time with this. This is important.
So that person you think would respond with it?
I would think so. Can we talk about this? I think that's what I said.
You said the words, would you mind?
Ooh, okay.
Which is probably be okay. But there
Yeah.
might the way of doing is that I want.
I
It's
want
okay to say, I want to talk face to face with you. If that's a much more direct thing. And you could also say, are you willing to do that? So do you remember those two phrases? This is what I want. What do you want? What I want is for this to happen. Are you willing to do that? So I want to talk face to face with you on this. You texting saying,
yeah.
and are you willing to do that? So now you placed a much more direct question in their mind. Are you willing? Now they have to go,
You're giving them choice.
and you're making them think. And most of the time, they're going to go, well, okay. It'd be unreasonable to say no at that point, generally.
Well, I think that was a big thing, right? Like you're positioning it in such a way that saying no would be very hard to do. Which, and going back on it, actually, I did have to do that because at the time I was not in a space where there was face to face contact. So I had to initiate it that way.
And you ended up in face to face contact. So, in that,
Yeah.
yes.
Hmm.
So, maybe your listeners are of a generation where all they do is text each other.
Yes.
Texting is when you read a word on a text, person who's reading it will read in emotionally what that word means. They project onto that word. And for example, let's say they got a response from somebody, and the response was "Wow." Well, that could be "Wow, that's great," or "Wow, who do you think you are?" And so it's so easy to misread and misunderstand words in text because you can read your emotional thing right into it.
Yes. How do you find, I mean, like the way that we frame that um, text message scenario, what would you say? Like we're talking about the importance of tonality, and also the importance of words. I mean, there's only you're limited by text, but I guess you just have to choose your words very carefully.
That's one of the reasons to slow down. When I write a text that has some importance to it, actually, all texts that I send, I go back and I read it. I make sure that Siri didn't misunderstand me, write in another word. I will read it, and if it's an emotional kind of person I'm dealing with, an issue, I'll read it and think, what does that feel like for that person to read that word? So this word mindfulness that you said is so important. Becoming mindful of what comes not just out of your mouth now, but what you type into a text. What does that word do? It's a single word could be.
Yeah. So the buy-in, caring for another, being mindful of your ego in the words that you use. What are some other, I want to say pitfalls?
All
What are
right.
some,
Here's one. This is a really good question. Thank you for that question. So it reminds me of something that's actually going on in my life right now. There's an individual who is very manipulative and wants to have something that I have. And rather than going about it in a way that's courteous and um, reasonable under the circumstances, they use guilt and they use blaming. And one of the things this individual texted was, because you're not doing what I'm asking you to do, I'm not trusting you. I think you're hiding something. So now my ego could get bruised, and I could text back saying, trust is everything. If you don't trust me, then we have no place to go. Or I could say something sarcastic, or I don't trust you either. This is this is how we're raised. Most of us
yeah,
respond. So my first inclination is to say nothing and sit on it. If it's still important after reflection and being silent, maybe that means the next hour or the next day, or maybe longer. If I want to respond to something like that, I might say, I can see that you're very uncomfortable with what is going on. And I understand that. I get that. I'm so sorry that you're having that feeling because I want you to trust me and I want to trust you as well. What can we do about it? Might be, and I'm just making this up as we're talking here, a much better response than, how dare you talk to me that way, basically.
Yeah.
You just ruined the relationship or you just ruined the business relationship or whatever.
It happens so often, like those communication breakdowns. Win-win communication to me, like in that moment, like you can save that relationship potentially. Like I'm willing to have this conversation because I sincerely care about you. And you can also, from a place of power, see their own insecurity, their own fear, like you were saying.
So if someone is listening and they're thinking, well, I don't care about everybody. There's some people I don't genuinely don't like, which is true for all of us. There are people that I like, some people that I don't. But one thing to remember is on a very deep soul level, we're all connected. And every person that comes into our life, every communication, every challenge is an opportunity for us, for me, for you, for whoever's listening, to learn something.
Okay, that if you're listening to this, that's a lot of wisdom just got thrown at you.
So we're connected all. And Einstein, we have Einstein to thank for opening our minds to saying that all there is energy. And he said, this isn't metaphysics, this is science. And all there is energy, and that's all there is to it. We're all connected. So if that's true, and this is an illusion, as Einstein said, and so much of physics is beginning to show that more and more, the reality is that we are all one, splintered off into seemingly various experiences and circumstances, all of which in a given lifetime come our way to challenge us, to give us a lesson. And if we don't learn that lesson, then the challenges will continue to come in other ways and in other lifetimes until we do learn.
I was listening to someone talking about these negative things that come into your life. There's never in the sense of energy. There's never really a negative thing in the spectrum of polarity because the negative, or what we would call negative, gives us an opportunity to expand, learn, and grow. And so there's a net positive from that. So there's never really a negative type of thing. Like it's just this constant expansion.
We have a friend that some months ago passed away, and he'd had a series of strokes, and he was really quite ill and in physical pain for many years. And the dementia came in and made it even harder for him. And my prayer for him was, I want him to have learned something from this experience. Most of the time, I guess maybe people's prayers would be, I hope the pain goes away, or that they die soon so they're not in pain anymore, or that something, that some miracle will happen and then they no longer have what's the dilemma that they're facing.
Mhm.
I truly believe that we are here to learn. And if my thought toward this individual and all that he is suffering, that he learns something, that he will not have to come back and do it again, that this that he chose to experience in this particular lifetime was chosen by his soul self. And I hope your listeners know that we're going off win-win communication into another realm altogether. That his soul self chose these experiences for a particular reason. And my prayer for him is that whatever that reason was, I pray that he learn it.
Yeah. It's a very loving prayer to offer. Um,
Thank you.
well, thank you. You know, there is in this life we connect with people, and obviously you are a soul connection of mine and a wonderful human being that is willing to share your knowledge and wisdom to people, to help them. Like, there's so many people that run into problems that can learn about this technique and how to do it to bring more love and joy into their life and smooth out connections and learn from people, who are really just a reflection of ourselves. So
Such a
thank you.
such a pleasure. Thank you for this opportunity. I mean that. And there is something that I want to suggest if you're open to it.
Yes.
I would love to do this win-win communication. I would love to have you bring someone into this conversation who has a win-win desire to win-win communication, but has a real problem and a challenge. And let's see if we can work with that person right here on your podcast. The show works. What would he think?
I think that would be interesting to have a live demonstration of that. I think it would certainly be helpful to have a real life challenge like that. I'll definitely have to ponder that and see if I can find someone to volunteer.
I will ponder it too and see if I can find someone. So, um, I would love to do that.
But it's
It,
a wonderful idea.
the other thing I want to say before we part, because I so appreciate you and I love you. I know that you're where your heart is and you're teaching such wonderful things with your mindfulness. Totally support you and have for years and will continue.
Well, that is very. Thank you so much. I mean, that's a wonderful thing to hear, and obviously, I very much appreciate you and all that you have done for me and are continuing to do for people. And again, I'll link to Dr. Wendy's site. She is in Encinitas, California. For those out in the San Diego area. And yeah, we will talk again. So thank you.
Thank you, Jim. God
All
bless.
right. Bye. Thank you so much for tuning in today and being with us. May you find joy, flow, and adventure on your journey. And if you got something from it, please like, share, and subscribe and or comment. It means a lot. Thank you.